It's too bright.
Testing, we're live. Testing, testing.
Why are we doing the sound check live? Start over.
You can.
You can't. Yeah, you can. Are you ready?
I gotta go live on Instagram. All right.
What's up, Blueprint family? Thank you all for joining us tonight. We have a great topic for you all tonight. Are prenups a necessity? And we wanted to talk about this because it's a great way for people who are worried about their own finances coming into relationships, whether you are making a lot of money or no money at all. It is a great way to show the person that you're marrying that you're actually marrying them for them, and it's not about money at all. So this is something that we probably, on average, people do not think about before getting married or negotiate prenuptial agreements.
Mhm. But now, more than ever, prenups are on the rise,
Are they?
specifically compared to prior generations. Yeah, based on a few statistics that we're going to get into today, well, tonight. In prior generations, prenups were not as common. Maybe this was because it wasn't as many people getting, well, some of the main reasons, of course, is that it's not as an increase of people who have such a large amount of finances before they get married. Statistically, now people are getting married much, much later. So, because of that, they've acquired way more than back then when statistically they got married early 20s.
Mhm.
So, that's definitely playing a huge part. But also, of course, just the rising divorce rates in general that has been going on in the recent years has gained a popularity towards prenups because people still want to get married, but like you were saying, they want to be protected if they do choose to get married.
Right. So, follow us here with the mentality of understanding why a prenuptial agreement is very important. And it has nothing to do with the fact that you're trying to run game on your significant other. So
Yeah.
that's what I think that's the first thought that men and women have when they're asked, can you sign this prenuptial agreement first? But honey, I love you, but can you sign this prenuptial agreement first?
Yeah.
I think that the first mindset of someone is like, oh, you about to do me wrong or do me dirty. No, that's nothing at all dealing with that. Understand that marriage is a business. It is. Marriage is a business. There is value, there's money that's being transferred back and forth in a relationship, and you want to protect your wealth. Everyone should want to protect their wealth. And in the case of infidelity, or the number one reason why people get divorced is because irreconcilable differences, then you're covered. Both people are covered. I like to think of prenuptial agreements, and they go both ways. Men and women should both have prenuptial agreements, and it shows that you're not marrying for money. To me, that's what that means.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why you especially now it's a trend towards prenups. One of the main ones is the social norm around it being that people are acquiring more wealth, and that's largely because of the new increased economic independence that women have. So with them also having acquired wealth as exponential rates, like you were saying, compared to um, prior generations, of course, it looks great for women to also want to protect themselves in the case that, they get into a marriage, which is huge. People fear that, again, the assets of being,
Right,
losing everything.
right.
But another one, believe it or not, longer life expectancies. People are living longer too. So with that, hey, you're living longer, you're going to acquire more. And I guess with you also increasing your wealth throughout time, you may get even more wealth because you've already, acquired this amount. So,
Right. And I would even say this to even soften the conversation before addressing your spouse to sign your prenuptial agreement. Also have a living will. If you are already married, let them know that, hey, I even have this will here for you. In the case that I am deceased, you're going to get everything anyway. So so that that'll soften the situation up and let them know that, hey, I'm not trying to, run game on you. And then also to allow them to also have a prenup. But let's continue with the information before I
Yeah.
tell all of it.
Yeah, let's just get into some of the other reasons why, of course, it's becoming more increasingly popular for people to get prenups. In general, when you think about the life expectancy, and especially the more high profile people that are coming about, the more millionaires that are being created, a prenup, also known as a marital agreement, is a legal contract that's between two married people who are getting married. And it outlines specifically how their assets will be divided in the event of a divorce. Now, I wanted to make sure to say that definition so that people can really understand the importance of just having this before marriage. Now, if you're already married, and you acquire those assets, you up and become famous while you're married, or whatever the case may be, or maybe your spouse, whatever, in that time, all the assets that are obtained is during the marriage. So you can't kind of say, oh, I was the one that got famous, or whatever the case may be, and this is my money. No. So that's a little different, but definitely wanted to get into definition so that people are aware of, what it actually means when you're having a prenup. But it's used to protect assets that were acquired before the marriage. And though, if you have gone into having a prenup, sometimes people will get into a little other things that you can include in a prenup, but sometimes people actually do outline how assets that are acquired during the marriage, say, for example, you're already high profile before you get into your marriage, and then you get into your marriage and you know that you're going to obtain so much more money because of deals you already have lined up. You can possibly outline how that is going to take place within the prenup, because although it's acquired during the marriage, it's quite different because it's already lined up. So yeah, it's pretty interesting how all of that can play out.
All right, so let's dive into some statistics about prenups today.
Yeah.
So the number of prenups have increased significantly in recent years. That's what my wife was speaking of. So in 1990, it was about 3% of married couples who were getting into prenuptial agreements. And then let's speed up to 2019. The number has increased to 12% of married couples who currently have prenuptial agreements.
Wow.
So now prenups are becoming increasingly common, or popular rather, as people get married later in life. So the average age of people who get prenuptial agreements are around the age of 38.
Wow. Statistically, that's old.
But
I wouldn't
that makes sense though, because those people have wealth, or creating wealth, or
Yeah.
have businesses, and they're creating businesses. So you become well established in your late 30s.
Yeah.
Most common, and that's most common with today's society.
Yeah.
So those people have more so to lose in a situation when it comes to marriage. So the most common reasons for getting prenuptial agreements is to protect your assets, like my wife said before. So and you want go ahead. You want to do the next one? Okay. So prenups are more common amongst couples who have significant assets that they want to protect. And that can come from different financial backgrounds. So,
or in general, if you come from different financial backgrounds. Yeah.
So about 60% of prenuptial agreements include a provision for alimony. Believe it or not, there's alimony that are in prenuptial agreements. So, women and men, you don't have to fear. So especially women. So if your husband's making a lot of money, he's going to write in their prenuptial agreement some sort of alimony that you all can agree to, as opposed to letting the court decide or fighting it out with your lawyers. It will make your divorce seamless. God forbid you have to take that route, because you already have an agreement, and what that will look like, you all will already have agreed to it. So about 40% of prenuptial agreements include a provision for child support.
Wow. And that's probably very important, because especially if you're entering into a marriage, I can imagine with the divorce, children just being the most, headache of it all, trying to figure out what to do with the babies, because that's the most unfortunate thing about it,
Right. And then you leave that up to the judge to decide if you do
Yeah.
not sign a prenuptial agreement after mediation, if mediation doesn't work. So understand that you don't have to fear also having children and paying child support
Mhm.
and using that as an excuse on not getting married.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to reveal to you all, is that there are protections for getting married, men and women. You don't have to be scared about that. And I think a lot of people forget this
Yeah.
before getting married, especially folks our age. Even though they said what 12%, in 2016 or something, that's still a low number as far as people getting married. That number should be around 64%, to be honest with you.
With
That
the
I think,
prenup. Yeah.
yeah, that I think today, Darren, it's 2023.
Yeah.
Why aren't we thinking of prenuptial agreements when you have the red pill culture and alpha women out here making all the money in major cities?
Yeah.
Men can protect themselves and their assets, and women can too.
Yeah.
you know
And like you said, it alleviates a lot of that fear that people have, because truth be told, if you take the risk of getting into a marriage, it can turn out to be very beneficial, just as much as you won't want to worry about it not being beneficial. But the chances are it can still be very lucrative and beneficial for you in your life, and you're with your wife or husband. And it can be a nice thing to take that risk on. But just know that you can protect yourself if, our Instagram got disconnected. All good, it's reconnected.
It's reconnected.
Mm-hmm. But if you do take the time to go ahead and set this up, it could really alleviate a lot of the fears, and it'll be worth the risk. If you find someone that you say, hey, I can really I can see myself setting up a good life with them, go for it. Don't let your fears hold you back. Instead, protect yourselves, men and women. That's super important.
Right. It reminds me of that soccer player who married that model or whatever the case may be, and then he divorced her, and then she got nothing because all of it went to his mother.
Yeah.
So evidently they're Moroccan, I think. So I think their laws are different. But here in the United States, instead of giving everything to your mother,
Yeah,
you can, like I said, do a prenup. So let's continue with the stats.
Yep.
So about 20% of prenups include pets. So they also, have to figure out what we're doing with Scruffy and Fluffy.
Yeah.
We bought them together. So now we're going to do a, what do you call it? A joint custody situation for these
That
puppies.
is interesting. 20% though, 20%. But I mean, I guess people really care about their pets, especially if statistically they're getting prenups at 38, right? So
Right.
it shows statistically 38-year-olds are the ones that are getting prenups. And if that's the case, they probably have a couple cats and dogs within that lifetime. So I can see how maybe needing to work out who's going to get what. But that's interesting.
Is there such thing as pet support? Do you have to pay, if there's child support, do you have to pay pet support?
That's interesting, considering some couples are like, oh, they don't want to have kids. So,
they got dogs and cats.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so prenups are not always necessary, but there are some benefits to getting a prenup, especially in modern dating times compared to previous generations. So we're just going to go over some of the pros that can come along with some of the cons we're going to get into later on. But first, prenups can really give couples a good peace of mind, and that's super important to have when you're entering a marriage.
Right.
So people are fearful so much nowadays. If you can do any little thing to help alleviate some of that fear, it's really good,
Right. Yeah, it just makes all the sense. How many people are, if you're out there listening or watching this video, how many of you all are afraid of prenuptial agreements? I mean, not prenuptial agreements, of getting married. Comment on this video and explain why you are scared of getting married. A lot of you are probably going to say, because of, I don't want this woman to take all of my money, or I don't want this man to take all of my money.
Right.
Now that you all understand hypogamy and relationships and how that works, and we had provide you all with that information about 2 months ago or a month ago, that you women and men who have money normally date down when it comes to finances. They don't normally date people who have more finances or have more wealth than they do.
Right.
In a lot of situations.
Right.
So that's what we're talking about here, and that those people can cover themselves with this prenuptial agreement.
Yep, we are back
Again,
live now on Instagram.
yep. Hi, Instagram's followers. We're talking about prenuptial agreements and why they are necessary today,
Yeah.
especially for those people who fear relationships or fear getting married. You look no further, because a prenuptial agreement is a way to alleviate that fear, and that's what my wife was talking about. Is that it takes away the stress of getting married and fear and doubt
Yeah.
of marriage before you actually get into a uh, marriage.
Yeah, prenups can really give you peace of mind about certainty of where your assets are going to be going in the event of a divorce. It's super unfortunate, and it's kind of, scary, like a will. People don't want to write a will because you're like, oh, now we're talking about death, So it's just all that whole stigma, fear around it. But truth be told, if you know what's going to happen, it's a comfort that you can kind of trust, and you're protected in the case of the divorce, or a divorce. So it really makes things much more calm and serene within the mind. And this is especially important for couples who have significant assets or who really come from different financial backgrounds, like you kind of touched on before. So that means if the woman, let's say that the woman is super, comes from a wealthy family, and the man is marrying into this wealthy family, maybe she may feel the need to want to protect herself because, hey, he's not as wealthy as she is because of her family's name. Sometimes a prenup is super necessary in that time to give peace of mind, not only for the woman, but maybe even her family as well. And it can go vice versa for the man as well, because you're taking on a woman if you think that this woman's lifestyle is quite different from yours. Maybe she isn't used to the finances that you have, and she may, want to grab all she can because it's a new lifestyle coming into that, and you might be a little fearful of that. It can definitely ease your mind and let your spouse know, and let you know that everything is okay. You can protect yourself and your assets. Yep. So also too, I wanted to point out, this can really help a couple to focus on planning the future, right? So after you've figured out the what if, the big looming what if, right? You can then say, okay, we got that out the way. Let's really focus on planning the future and how we're not going to let this happen, how we are going to build a strong foundation for a relationship that will last a lifetime, not planning to fail.
Right.
Mhm.
Um, Prenups can help to create greater transparency between couples about their finances before
Mhm.
marriage. This can lead to more honest and open communications about money, which can be beneficial for the health of the relationship.
Yeah. Yep, that is super, super true.
Right. So the women will know the financial standings of their husbands and see whether or not they are telling the truth about their money. And then we already go and said in a previous video that you should get a credit check. Both of you should check
Mhm.
each other's credit first before marriage as well, too. So prenups also help to reduce well, we talked about that, stress during a divorce. God forbid you all have a divorce. This is because they provide a clear roadmap for how assets will be divided.
Mhm.
So you don't have to waste a lot of time in court and high lawyer fees. I think a
Mhm.
divorce on average now is costing about $70,000.
Phew.
Um, and
Mm.
that's just for the divorce. So
Mhm.
and prenups can also help for couples who have children from previous relationships as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting, especially if, again, we go back to statistically, uh 38 years old is the age, chances are you may have already had a previous marriage or have kids. That's important to think about. Prenups can actually be used to say, hey, what's going to happen in the case of our children? Like, do they get children support, child support as well, because they have benefited from having two parents come together and get married or whatever the case may be. So, being able to work out all that, who is the other father or mother going to contribute to that? How does that look? And just coming to terms on how you're going to blend your family. That is super important to get that down in writing. It really helps, again, to provide a roadmap of what things will look like and give you guys an ease and comfort and really help you plan for the future.
Mhm. And then as I stated before in the beginning of this video, we talked about some of the critics of prenuptial agreements.
Yeah.
So some people argue that they are a sign of distrust.
Yeah.
And they argue that the prenups are a sign that one or both spouses do not trust each other.
Yeah.
And that is not the case at all. And I think that's a small-minded thing. And then also a people usually who are not educated in the realm of contract law, they think this way. So they think that, oh, you're, like I said, you're trying to run game on me by asking me to sign a prenuptial agreement.
Yeah.
So my advice is that you both create prenuptial agreements.
Yeah.
Take your monies, get two different lawyers and draft prenuptial agreements, and then try to negotiate those until you all can find common ground and a win-win for both of you all with common sense.
Yep.
This is like I said, to better protect yourselves.
Yeah.
So some say prenups show a lack of commitment in a relationship. That's not it at all. I think that's more so showing that you're committed to the relationship, because you're telling your spouse that, hey, this is what you're going to get, and this is only what I'm going to get after the prenup, or after a divorce rather. So it actually shows that transparency. So I think that it actually makes the relationship more, not challenging, but it makes it more, I guess that's transparent. It makes it more transparent. So whether you really want to be with me or not, or either you're marrying me for money. So that's the ultimatum. Once you've made your prenup transparent, is the fact that you're basically telling your spouse, I'm not here to waste your time or mine. I really love you, and we should really get married.
Yeah.
That's what I think a prenup actually really means.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I think that's what it does establish. But I also understand the side of it possibly showing being a crutch for a lack of commitment, especially if it creates an environment where if you are having some type of conflict, you guys are so quick to throw out the divorce word because you already have a prenup set in stone. You're just like, oh, well, F it. I don't care. I got a prenup and I know this is going to happen afterwards. You get what I'm saying? It gives you like a cradle to where it can make it more difficult to solve problems and conflicts if you aren't mature about saying, hey, it's still not a reason for us not to problem solve and work through, and don't just lean on the irreconcilable differences. You get what I'm saying? If they don't just do that, that's super important. You have to be mature in general when you're entering a marriage, but even more so if you give a cushion like a prenup, because then it gives you a clean out. And sometimes that clean out can be too alluring in those times of distress that you will go through.
Well, the thing about this is this: you can create the prenuptial terms and conditions so that those situations are not a justification for divorce.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, we're actually going to get into some of that specifically, like some things that people can do. I think that would be great to actually go into a little more, because you're right. Yeah,
because you should automatically rule out irreconcilable differences.
Yeah,
as far as being a term and condition for divorce in your prenup.
Yeah, because what is that? You just not problem solving,
right? You're not communicating. You're not trying to work on a relationship. That's what that means.
Like that is, I think that was probably one of the worst things that could have been given as a out for marriage.
Divorce.
Yeah, like that is, to me, such a cop out reason of why you're getting a divorce. Irreconcilable differences. Like, no, dude, y'all need to sit down and figure this stuff out, because that's what marriage is about. Plain and simple. So that kind of ties into another critique of prenups. Some actually say that it can encourage discourage communication. Thank you. That it's really a way for people not to actually want to sit down and talk about money. Now, I don't necessarily think that this is the case, because a prenup actually does make you sit down and say, hey, this is our finances, this is what's going on, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to handle it. And then you're putting it in writing and everything. So I think that a prenup does encourage conversation and communication, but I can understand the critique and where it could come from, that, oh, if a person puts a prenup in place, that, hey, one spouse is less likely to want to, I guess, work things out if they know that they have more to receive in a prenup or whatever.
Then you make it the bare minimum. Then you negotiate the bare minimum.
Yeah.
That's what you do. You negotiate the bare minimum. You should, of course, have your spouse's input when it comes to they're not gonna sign it if they don't agree to it anyway.
Right.
So that's just the case of the matter.
Right. Yeah. Another one, in the event of a divorce, they say that sometimes if you have a prenup, that a person will be less likely to discuss the finances of what they have acquired during the marriage or whatever the case may be, because they'll say, oh, the prenup is what stands. When we're actually going to get into some actual ways that a prenup can be challenged in court, believe it or not. As much as a prenup is a contract, it has to be done in a way that's fair and reasonable to both parties. So there are some reasons why a prenup can be challenged, and that's some things that we're going to get into. But if we continue on with some of the more critiques that people have about a prenup, some also, of course, say that they can lead to conflict, especially if one feels that a prenup is more advantageous, provides more advantage to another spouse over, one. So say, for example, if you have like a stay-at-home mom, that's an easy given one. A stay-at-home mom compared to a man that works, maybe the stay-at-home mom may feel like they're not getting the full what they deserve. If their spouse decides to cheat or whatever the case may be, they can't, go file for divorce, or they're less likely or more likely to file for divorce based on, the advantages of the prenup. So some say that it can lead to conflict, but that's just how it goes. Who knows? It's really, I think, all about how you work it out in your prenup, and what y'all establish. And yeah, it's all, it depends on the circumstance for sure. So yeah, but with all the criticisms, prenups can be a valuable tool. So you want to keep going?
Yep. So the value of prenup. So a list of prenup includes a list of people's assets and debts, and we spoke about that before. Also, a provision of how assets will be divided in the event of a divorce.
Yeah, these are things that are usually included. I just wanted to say, because you skipped over, but just these are things that are included into.
We mentioned this earlier. So a provision for child support and provision for alimony. Yeah. Also, provisions for how the prenup can be changed or terminated. Mm-hmm. So those are some terms and conditions that are in there. Here are some unusual or different things that people put in prenuptial agreements. So we talked about pets, how they will include their pets into the prenuptial agreement in the event of a divorce. Yeah. So that's becoming more common with people, especially young couples who don't have children. And also provisions for social media accounts. So who's going to hold the passwords and usernames to social media accounts? This is becoming more common in today's society, and couples who are getting married and drafting prenuptial agreements.
That is interesting. Mm-hmm. That is super interesting to think social media has played such a big impact in our relationships that people are including provisions for social media when it comes to their divorce or their marriage or their prenups. It makes me kind of think of Kanye and the whole Kim and Kanye thing, where he was upset that after, their marriage or whatever, that their daughter, whatever their daughter's name is, no disrespect, but she is on social media. You hear it in the news. He's upset that his daughter's doing certain things on social media and stuff like that, and the mom was fine with it. I wonder if that's something that could have been included in like a prenup. If you're saying like, hey,
anything could be included in a prenuptial agreement.
But it just shows how that in real life plays out, and how it is quite, something to consider, especially if you are a high profile family or person or anything like that. Maybe even if you're super high profile and your spouse isn't, and you don't want your spouse to leak out any information about you or anything like that, what they can talk about when they're on
It's called a
social
gag
media.
order.
Yeah, what they can say and stuff like that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's at some point you'd have to have a level of privacy, especially when you are in front of people and your life isn't as private as you would like it to be. When you are sharing a safe space with your spouse, you want to make sure that even though in the unfortunate event of a divorce, you guys are still able to respect that privacy, respect that boundary, and just keep a safe space for each other. Your life still go on together in a way, especially if you still have kids. So yeah.
So also there include the unusual items that are in some people's prenups, also provisions on how children from previous relationships will be supported in the event of a divorce. So if you adopt a child or have children of your own, like my wife spoke about it before,
Yeah.
because they are in the relationship now and you've both agreed to parent the child, you can also add in what that child support may look like for that either adopted child or either a child that you had from a previous relationship that you both agreed to take care of.
Yep. That is so true.
So also a provision of how the prenup can be changed or terminated. So let's talk about that. So this can be important for couples who want to make sure that the prenup is still fair and equitable in their relationship. So you understand that contracts are fluid. They can change in the case that both parties agree to the changes of these things, and depending on certain circumstances, you're allowed to change. So you wanted to include what the terms are that will allow you to change. Maybe that you can renew this prenup every 5 years, every 3 years, every 4 years, or every annually, in which you can sit down with your spouse and think about things that you want to throw in there. And understand again, that may seem uncomfortable or weird, but understand that what really is going on is the fact that you all are tightening the bond to actually make the marriage last. So, you should be weary of what constitutes a divorce now in your prenup.
Yeah.
And don't do those things. That's what that prenup is all about, making sure that you don't do any detriment to your marriage, and to keep you righteous and honest in your relationship, so that you don't have to use a prenuptial agreement.
Yeah, and some people even put in there, if certain things do happen, that hey, this person will get more money or less money, or like certain other things would happen. They would, have this happen or that happen. They wouldn't invite other significant others and other parties into the relationships and stuff like that, if they're co-parenting and stuff. So it's a lot of different things that you will need to work out within getting a prenup. So yeah, hey, unfortunately, it may need to be changed or terminated, and nothing is always permanent. So be open and flexible to what that may look like throughout your marriage, especially when you think of life expectancy increasing and you being with this spouse like for so long. Are the same things that you talked about in your prenup going to hold up 30 years later, 40 years later, 50 years later? Yeah, but will they change? How will they change? Will it even matter? Will you have acquired so much together that it's kind of null and void at that point?
So
all of that could be in
there. We could talk about what constitutes a change. Do you have that information?
No, I don't. But there's lots of things I would think. Yeah.
Well, one thing that would constitute a change if you all have a business together. So, or either if the husband has a business with someone else. So, depending on how much of that business he owns, you can, and especially if the business is growing, you all can change the amount of money that your spouse will own as far as part of your share of the business. So those things that you can change as well. If you all acquire some sort of asset from a deceased family member, you can add that in there and make those changes as well. What else? Trust fund accounts, if you all have established those, if the marriage doesn't last, then you can dissolve that and explain how much money that your spouse get from the trust fund if it ever has to be divided. So newly acquired assets in a marriage are provisions for change in a prenuptial agreement in which you may have to modify the contract and
Yeah.
add that information in there. So those
Yeah.
things constitute changes.
Yeah.
So
Also, though, it has to be agreed upon prior to forming this prenup. So you can't just say, "Oh,
well, it can't be.
well, what I mean is it needs to be agreed upon how and when these changes can take place. You don't just one partner up and decide, "Oh, I want to change the prenup," without the other person saying, "No, that wasn't fair."
Well, yeah, the other
it
person has to sign it. So
yeah,
an
it has
agreement.
that. Yeah, that was my statement.
But
It has to be established before the marriage that these are the things that will to take place that say, "Hey, we can terminate or change a prenup. If these things do not take place, then hey, we can't,
no,
do it."
that ain't, you can also do contract mods.
If they're both agreed upon, though, is what I
Right.
mean. Like the husband, if he, in the sense of, I guess, your statement of like an acquiring of a new business, within that with another partner, if that was not already agreed upon in the prenup, that this would constitute a change. That's why it's super important that these things are written down, because you can't just, if the other partner doesn't agree upon these being the reasons
In the
that
beginning.
will in the beginning that constitute a change or termination or whatever the case may be, then it's not really up for discussion, because legally y'all didn't write out that this would be the reason why it would be a change or whatever. Kind of has to be open for agreement on both parties.
Not at the beginning. There's something called contract modifications, and where at any moment in time you can actually create one, and then you can both agree to the change the original terms. So there are ways that you all can change prenuptial agreements, even though if there is something that is preventing changes to the prenuptial agreement, you both can agree to make that change.
Yeah, you both have to agree, is what
Right.
I was saying.
Yeah.
It has to be both agreeing.
Right. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily if things in a contract are not necessarily in stone from the
Yeah.
beginning, you are allowed to modify contracts with proper
Yeah.
contract language utilizing a contract modification, or if there's a renewal, you can also modify during a renewal of the contract as well.
Yeah. Yep. And actually, believe it or not, prenups are not always enforceable. Some clouded judgment on that. Hey, this is a prenup, then it has to stand. But believe it or not, it's super important that you have a prenup drafted by an experienced attorney, so that they can be sure to take note of how you can make sure that your prenup is legally binding in all countries. Because believe it or not, in some countries, prenups are only valid if they are signed before the marriage. Some that speaks on like people that get married and then have those post-nuptial agreements and stuff like that. So some countries don't uphold those. And in other countries, prenups may also be void if they are considered unfair or unreasonable. So that's up for the judge to determine. Even if y'all did sit down and say, hey, this is what's going on, if the judge actually determines that this is unfair and unreasonable, then hey, your prenup can be challenged in court. So it's important that you really do sit down with a good experienced attorney, both of you, the woman and the male, coming together and having a fair and reasonable agreement that you both guys can come on. Another reason, well, some other reasons why a prenup may not be held in court, I think we kind of hit on that earlier, when your prenup is not signed voluntarily. So you want your person to be completely coherent, knowing what's going on, fully aware, understanding that, hey, this is what I'm signing, and not under any medication, not in a time where they can claim that they were depressed or sad or taken advantage of. None of that can take place in this time. So it's super important that you guys are both in a good, safe, comfortable space, so that you both can feel comfortable with what's being agreed upon.
Right.
Yep.
Also too, if the prenup is What's that sense?
Unconscionable. Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, it's kind of hitting on what I was saying previously about if it's like just
if it's
completely
unfair.
unreasonable. Yeah.
Unfair and unreasonable.
Yeah. Like if all of a sudden somebody acquires a large amount of money during that time for whatever reason, and it's surprise money. It was a blessing out of nowhere. The spouse can't be like, oh, well, this is mine, this, whatever the case may be, and not try to not let the spouse have any, benefit from that newfound money or whatever.
Right.
So that's completely unfair. And so it's important that, you in those times, a judge can rule if their spouse comes up with, of course they got to submit some pretty good evidence showing that, hey, like this happened and this was unfair and it's unconscionable, and hey, I deserve whatever, I think I should get out of this regardless of what this prenup says. So that really matters. Some people also, I think, and another time of like unconscionable is if like irreconcilable differences when it comes to divorces or something. If there's like no legit, say for example, you marry a spouse, man or woman, who is extremely wealthy, right? And then you get into your marriage, everything's good, y'all agree on this is the reasoning where y'all can get a divorce, and you have your prenup, you sign. And all of a sudden your spouse, maybe 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, they're just up and say, oh, irreconcilable differences, I don't want to get married. Because believe it or not, that's a legit reason, which is as crazy as it is. That's a legit reason to why somebody can try to get out of a marriage. That's not fair. And it's quite unconscionable to a person who like is in it and gave their best foot forward within the marriage and actually put their assets on the line, but you just up and decide, hey, I don't want to do this no more, for whatever reason, no legit reasoning, so that's quite unconscionable. And I think a judge would, be like, yeah, you can't just, especially if y'all put in a prenup, like, hey, these are the reasons why we got to get the divorce. And this is why, what has to take place in order for that to happen. So yeah, but believe it or not, that is some ways why a prenup just wouldn't stand up in court. And the last one, statistically, another reason why prenups kind of wouldn't stand up in court is if the prenup was not in writing. So this may sound a little, like, what do you mean? But believe it or not, some people may think like, oh, if they had a verbal agreement or they verbally said, hey, in their vows or whatever the case may be, that this is what they're going to get or this is what's going to happen, then hey, that's that. But hey, if your prenup was not in legit writing, probably signed in front of a notary, like with the legal team right there to witness everything that's going on, then hey, it's not quite enforceable. So you can't just in the middle of the night tell your spouse, oh, sign this piece of paper so that you don't try to get away with my stuff. That's not a prenup, and certainly not going to uphold in
or in recorded.
Yeah, upholding. Yeah.
Or recorded on video. I mean, video or audio.
Yeah, right. Or text message.
No, text messages do stand.
Those not signed though. It has to be signed. That is actually it has to be like a legit notarized signed document agreed upon between both spouses, not just saying, oh, hey, this is what I believe, we should do. And in the case of a divorce, that's not a prenup.
Right. No, texting and emails are official documents in case of evidence, but not right. They're not contractual law. You're right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, the prenups have to be notarized, of course. So to make sure that no one was forced to sign the documents.
Yeah.
And that is basically agreed upon by both people.
Yep. Full knowledge of the terms and what they're, aware of, that this is actually going on. Right. And the prenup was changed after it was assigned. So that's a big one too. If you when we're talking about going back and having those provisions or changes, or, if anything takes place and you want to change up something within your prenup, it has to take place before both contracts are signed, unless there's the addendum, like you were talking
about.
The modification. Yeah, that's the legal term. Yeah, for that. If you don't have that in place, if y'all didn't sit out and work out all of this beforehand, you can't just go change up the terms on something after it was signed. Yeah, right. It may not be enforceable. Now, some judges may agree and say, hey, it's, maybe in the sense of you got some evidence or something like that.
No, it won't, because the thing dealing with that is this. All right, so if I sign a document today and then everything is set there. What
Mhm.
this is explaining is that, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna just add another bullet point in there
Yeah, yeah,
and then write that in there. You
yeah,
can't. No, it's not enforced after after both parties have signed it. So you just
yeah,
can't. You just can't modify the contract in that way.
yeah.
You'll basically have to draft a modification, or either, like you said, an addendum, which will cover, basically exclude the previous contract, but or incorporate, rather it will rather incorporate the new terms and conditions
Yeah.
that both parties agreed to.
Yep. So we have gone over a whole lot, but if you have decided that, hey, a prenup is probably best for you in your relationship moving forward, if it will help alleviate some fears, like we've talked about, if it will help give you clarity, if it will help open up a space where you can comfortably plan together for the future, here are some steps that you can take to really get together a good prenuptial agreement that you and your spouse can agree on and really help set you guys on a good path. So, the first thing, of course, is to really sit down and have an open, honest conversation with your spouse about what you feel you deserve in your marriage. So, women, if you are going to step up and be a stay at home mom, or take a job that gives less pay, or only work half the time where you're in your marriage, all of that is something to really take in consideration on what you truly believe you will feel safe and comfortable taking on, knowing if in a divorce, what alimony are you looking for? We went over the statistics. 60% of prenups do include alimony, wives and men. Sometimes the woman is the breadwinner. Men are entitled to alimony too. That is okay to work out, and be sure that it's a number or a percentage that you are comfortable with. It's really all about being comfortable, open, and flexible
And
when you're
fair.
being fair. Yep. When you're coming to an agreement. Men, don't try to sell your wife short if you know that this is going to be who you're going to marry and you're actually going to stay into this marriage with. You want her to be comfortable signing this prenup as well, knowing that, hey, he's not going to just leave me high and dry if I do decide to stay at home or not take a high paying job or leave my career, whatever it is. That's okay. And that's completely comfortable, a good, comfortable conversation that you guys have to have in order to really set things off to a good path.
Right.
Yeah.
I think also too, just to throw this out there, a good prenup also has penalties
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in there to prevent you all from getting a divorce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So switching that mindset of, oh, this is what I get in case of a
Mm-hmm.
divorce. It's more so like you have to justify, like I said earlier, justify the cheating,
Mm-hmm.
justify the, I don't know, the irresponsibilities of not,
Yeah.
coming, being at home every night, or justify that you not supporting your spouse or
Mm-hmm.
being there for your family. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
so that's what, this is a prenup is really all about. For the viewers who just dropped in, it's not about trying to get over on somebody.
Yeah.
Prenups are not about that, and it never was about that,
Yeah.
because you both have to sign this agreement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And it's negotiable. Like,
Right.
that's a big part. That's part of the conversation. You both want to be on agreeable terms, just like you want to throughout your whole marriage. It's really going to help you just really kind of set a roadmap of, hey, if worst case scenario, this happens, let's go ahead, like a will, go ahead and establish what needs to happen if this does happen. We're not going to bet on it. We're just going to set it up so that then we can then plan for the future.
Right. Or either look at it like, oh, I better not do this, because if I
Mm-hmm.
do this, then I'm gonna lose half of this.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I cheat on my wife, then I agree that she gets 2/3 of all my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That type of thing. So to
Yeah.
let her know and have that comfort, for her to be comfortable in the marriage,
Yeah.
and get rid of fear and doubt
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
of marriage.
Yeah, it's really good for women and men. And so it's important too that you then both go out and do your research, right? See, we've given some examples, run this back, but we've gone over some examples of some things that you can put into your prenup that you definitely want to make sure to put in there. It's a lot of other outlier things that people might want to put in there. We talked about pets and other children from other marriages, and I don't know, houses, of course your assets and stuff, but maybe houses from families and stuff stuff like that. Like all those different things, however your life is set up, do your research and really see what other things could be included and what things you think you would want included so that you feel comfortable. Like my husband says, if you want to get rid of the whole idea of irreconcilable differences, get rid of that. Y'all can't, that's not a grounds for divorce. And if somebody does want to make that a grounds of divorce, then you slash what they get from this or whatever the case may be. Like that's just, it's all things like that. If there's something that makes you uncomfortable, please don't feel like it's too much to try to figure out a way that you can negotiate that within your prenup so that you guys are comfortable on moving forward.
Right.
A lot of modern dating is fear, right? So much fear of what's going to happen. Do this to alleviate fear. Please do this to help that.
Right. And especially for those men out there who are dating and they have, and they have great careers and they have money and they have women too. But, you're trying to marry somebody who's maybe questionable. Their past may be questionable. Their actions may be questionable, but you still care and love this person and you don't want them to leave your side and you want to marry this person. Make sure you have these type of people signing prenuptial agreements and understand that, you need to straighten your life up and you're going to straighten your life up with me.
Yeah.
So that they understand that.
Yeah, because it's a risk for sure for both parties. But when you're taking that risk, it's either to take the risk and say, hey, we're going to take it and go all in and we're going to protect ourselves this way, because it's always going to be a risk. You're always going to be worried about, something. That's just life. But it's really gives you a safe haven to say, hey, we're going to take this risk. We're going to protect ourselves and we're just going to be like, hey, YOLO it out. Let's do this. Because that's really what marriage is all about. I mean, you're going to grow with each other. You're going to change and you're going to have to experience life in ways that's going to make you a little bit uncomfortable. But if you can do things that will help give you some type of clarity and peace of mind, it's really going to help you alleviate those fears if you have any. So, yep. Another thing, of course, there's so many resources available online at the library. Talk to people that have gone through the experiences of a prenup, have that squared away so that then your research on really what you're getting into and whether or not, again, the pros and the cons of if this is the right thing for you. If you don't have anything to really protect, a prenup may not quite frankly be for you. We've gone over how like modern dating has changed drastically because now more than ever, it's a rise of people getting more money than they used to. And in particular, people are getting married later than they used to. So they have acquired more wealth during that time. If you're a young couple and you're trying to get married, have that homogamous relationship, you may not need a prenup because y'all ain't really got much.
They will. Yeah, they will. The
you
man,
think so?
Because if you get a divorce, the man is going to have to pay alimony.
Yeah, rightfully so. If y'all don't have anything and you have gotten into a marriage at I'm talking about if you decide to go marry your peer and y'all don't have anything and you commit to kind of a struggle love in a way because you don't have anything. So y'all got to figure it out.
That prenuptial agreement need to be an agreement to leave with what you came in a relationship with.
That's an interesting perspective considering nothing. Right,
whether you just leave with nothing.
You think?
Yeah, because how are you going to make two struggling people pay alimony?
That's why I say you wouldn't need a prenup. Like I can't really see.
No, the judge is going to make you pay
alimony. Yeah, after
because the man that naturally, traditionally, that's what happens is that the man pays
rightfully
alimony.
so, though. I think if you do take on that, what is it? The struggle love of being young and married and having.
Well, no,
even
he needs to have a prenuptial agreement. Everybody should have a prenuptial agreement, regardless of how much money that you have, because it makes it easier for the divorce to be easier and seamless and cheaper. That is what you all are protecting yourselves from. Even if you don't have anything, you're protecting yourself from a low to keep the divorce fees low. So you really don't have to jump through those hurdles or obstacles of trying to get a divorce and try to squeeze every penny out of your husband, even though he doesn't have anything and he works, he makes, $15 an hour.
Yeah.
Or whatever the case may be. Because if he's not really making anything, then he shouldn't have to afford, paying alimony either. You all just didn't get it right. That's what that means.
But even though statistically 60% of prenups do include alimony. So if you are going to sit there, I think that's
Yeah, but you
important
don't.
to think about though when you have a relationship that you are getting into and you do, say, for example, not have anything. And y'all say, hey, I want to have a I want you to be a stay-at-home dad or a stay-at-home mom, right? We're going to put this on either because women make a lot of money too nowadays. So say stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad. If you do decide to have a prenup, don't you think it's kind of fair that regardless of how much money that person is getting into, that then it should be like maybe a percentage, like if you
That's
are still
different.
going to talk
If
about alimony or not
Yeah,
getting
because
alimony?
now you're of service to the family.
Well,
You're of
you're
service
always,
to the.
yeah.
I was thinking in the tune that both people were working. So if both individuals are working in the relationship, then they both need to draft prenuptial agreements to protect their salaries. And especially if it's a young marriage or relationship, yeah, they need to protect themselves. And they basically come in the relationship with what they have, and they leave with what they have. But
Even on the case of that.
in the case of housewife, house dad, house husband, then that's different. Then you deserve alimony because you're being paid and you're out of work. And so
Mhm.
your job is the house, is maintaining and
Right.
managing the house. So that's what you're being paid for.
Right.
So yeah, there should be some sort of level of alimony
So that's
that's
important
involved.
to know because I think that is good. Like you said, even if you don't have anything, that gave me a different perspective. Even if you don't have anything, consider a prenup and then also think about the long term. So, are you always going to be working? If you are always going to be working, then hey, go ahead and put that in percentage wise to make sure that you're assets or whatever protected. But also if you know you're not always going to be working, and you can say how we talked about, you're going to have the provisions within that prenup that say, hey, if I'm not going to be working for these 5 years, and in between these 5 years, if we happen to get a divorce or whatever the case may be, this is what I'm subject to, or whatever the case may be. Try to really, if you are thinking about a prenup, really think about the long-term roadmap of what this is going to look like for your relationship. And I think even though some of the criticisms, the cons people said when it came to a prenup is that it doesn't uh, encourage the conversation of finances, I really think it will help to encourage the conversation of finances if you guys can look long term on how this prenup is right now and how it could change throughout the marriage. So that's important. And I honestly think that might even establish your mindset in, like my husband says, not getting out of the marriage, because you're saying, hey, these are also the terms, like this is what we're not going to do. So, that's good to think about. That gave me a different perspective for sure. So, anyways, make sure you meet with an attorney. So that's definitely a big one, a qualified attorney.
Right. I don't think I don't know if they do this on LegalZoom. So you
Oh
can do it
yeah.
online also too as well. I think they do have prenuptial agreements, and then you probably can you may need to notarize it
Of course. Yeah. In
in
person. Yeah.
person
Yeah. Yeah.
though. So they have all types of
Yeah.
ways you can draft these prenuptial agreements.
One thing that I will say that I actually had a conversation with a younger, soon to be married couple, and they were talking about how when they were trying to finalize their prenup, it got delayed so much that they in trying to get the prenup finalized. So you're talking about setting up an appointment with your attorney at least to include in this as well. And of course, any like hiccups that can come up with like copying, or like if the law firm gets overwhelmed with a bunch of cases or whatever the case may be, you want to protect yourself so that you're prepared for, the unexpected changes that could take place. Yep. I guess what after that, the meet with the lawyer, and of course sign your prenup. We kind of went into that. You sign your prenup, get that notarized and taken care of, and do all of that in person. Have that conversation, talk with your partner, your spouse, have them there, of course. What that would look like, it's not separate, you with one lawyer, him with another lawyer. You both should be together when you're doing this. Don't make this such a separate act, kind of like you're already in a divorce so much where you're not feeling one to come in to talk about things. You want to feel like, hey, we're doing this together, although it's kind of talking about divorce and separation. This is something that we're going to embark on together. So certainly try not to make this such a separate experience that you both go through. Try to bring each other into this experience together for sure.
Right. And then after you all sign that prenuptial agreement, celebrate.
Yeah.
You all need to celebrate and relax and
yeah.
Toast to a new beginning.
Yeah, of course, make copies. They talk about making copies. I think one cute thing to actually do is when you make your copy, rip one of them up together in a way of symbolizing like, okay, we ain't gonna do this, like not literally the main contract one, but when you celebrate, just kind of show like, all right, we ain't gonna do this though, like this isn't something that we're saying that's gonna happen. We're like, forget this is something that we had to do for the legalities of it, just like a will. A will in our Black community, everybody's scared to talk about a will or something like that. So
well, I mean, that's the whole point of actually doing a prenuptial agreement, so that everything is transparent, so that you know what the penalties are for acting up in your marriage. The penalties for infidelity. Say that you're going to get all of my money
or abuse,
or abuse, or whatever the case, you're gonna get all my money.
Neglect,
you
all that.
Throw all of that stuff out there as a deterrent to prevent prevent divorce.
Yep.
That's the reason why you need to create a prenuptial agreement, not to see what you're going to get in case of a divorce. It's really to prevent a divorce.
Right.
That's what you really should use a prenuptial agreement for. Yeah. And that's what everybody's mindset needs to change about prenups in today's age of dating, where there's a lot of women out there who make more money than men. And then also for the men who have money, who are dating women who don't have a lot of money, for them to understand that I'm not going to leave you, and these are the penalties if I do leave you. I know what my responsibilities are, and I choose not to do that, and I'll be fair and honest with you during this whole marriage.
Yeah.
That's how we need to change our perception and our mentality when it comes to prenuptial agreements, as a divorce deterrent.
Yep.
Not something that will initiate a divorce.
Yep.
That's the old way of thinking.
Yep, that is so true. And with this modern dating age, it's super important to deter a lot of the fears that's going along with getting married, and deter as much of the anxieties as you can.
Right.
I did want to mention that we made the joke about ripping up one, but do make sure that you store in a good place your copy of the prenup.
Or just keep it with your lawyer.
Yeah.
You can keep it with your lawyers as well, or get an email copy of it or something.
Bank safe box, something, just whatever.
I wouldn't
just
get a deposit
something.
box for it, but
I don't know how people store their stuff.
Well, the lawyers, so your lawyers usually file it, or either like you say, like I said, you can get a digital copy of it, save it in your Google Drive or what have you.
Yeah.
But do anyone have any questions? Any of our followers or viewers
or comments? Yeah, we're gonna go to our
questions.
chats. Yeah, this
Anything?
is a great one.
Yep.
It's super important. I'm all for trying to alleviate a lot of the fears of what's going on, because people really have to understand that it's better. We're better together, and we're better building together. We're more successful when we choose to do it together. But that does not mean that we go into it recklessly. That doesn't mean that we go into it naively. We do things to protect ourselves and to really make a safe space for everybody to go through what's very important in life, an important duty that requires maturity, that requires that commitment, that discipline, and embracing change, and embracing kind of some of the fears that you're going to have when it goes along with growing up and just going into adult life and stuff. So this is just one of them. We all need to kind of adjust with the times of how things look when you are getting married nowadays. So,
right.
Yeah.
If you utilize prenuptial agreements, if the world utilized prenuptial agreements, just like we've explained, the divorce rates will drop. Trust me, they will drop drastically.
Yeah. And truth be told, women, I value men. This is concept of men not getting married. That is BS, to be completely honest. Men are getting married. Rates are not showing a decline in marriage per se, but it's showing a decline in marriage when early age. So what that means is men and women are preparing themselves. They're getting married later, those 30s, much later, so that they actually have something to bring into a marriage. Men need to take that time. Men need to take that time and actually be providers, set themselves up so that they can bring on a wife to really take care of. So women, we got to be understanding to that as well, and look into that as not being fearful and allowing this man to be a provider, but to also take on the task of having a prenup so that we're protected and we understand that, hey, this is a big, thing that we're going to take on as wives.
Mhm.
So, hey, protect yourself as well. Don't be intimidated if your man comes to you and says, hey, I want a prenup. You say, great.
Right.
Let's go ahead and figure this out so that we know we're going to both benefit from this. And then at the end of the day, this is also going to deter us from getting married. I mean, from getting a divorce and keep us married.
Yep.
I like that mindset you said about that. That's a really good one.
Yeah, that's it. That's the answer for it all, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Red pill, blue pill culture, or whatever
Purple
the case
pill,
may
pink
be.
pill, blue.
That's the antidote for all of the fear that's been going around the internet, and people saying that no, men are not, men not getting married, women not getting married, or what have you. A good prenuptial agreement will actually keep people together instead of keep people apart.
Yeah.
But that's our time tonight.
Yeah.
Blueprint family, thank you all for coming out tonight. Instagram viewers and YouTube and Facebook, thank you all. If you can please like, share, subscribe. Thank you for the 100 viewers that are on our YouTube, and we're growing. We finally broke the 100 mark this week, so we really appreciate you all. And until next time, you all have a wonderful night. Peace.
Peace. Well, huh?